Hello, KAFKUBA fans. It's the holiday season, and I have a new hobby I'd like to share with my audience. My mother's 85 years old, and over the years we have had a bunch of vintage radios and record players and such, and this was probably my bedroom growing up, and it's an RCA Victor X551 AM radio. I don't know what got me going on this, but I'm an engineer. I've been an engineer for 30 years, professional career. Believe it or not, in that time I've never done electronic work, barely even soldered except in my own home. I've been more of a systems engineer, more power related, but I don't know, one thing led to another, and I must have watched one too many YouTube videos, and I decided maybe I'd start refurbishing some of my old electronics that we have around the house. Now, this was in my bedroom, like I said, or in the basement, and a bunch of other places. I think I used to turn it on just as a gimmick every now and then, and probably the last time I flicked it on was in the 90s, maybe even the 80s, but I plugged it in at the home when I was home for Christmas, and I heard it humming. It started up, but the dial would not bring in any radio stations. I had it apart quickly. I took the knobs off. There's the tuning knob, and here was the on knob and the headphone jack. I had it all apart, and I pulled the knobs off. They came off relatively easily just by pulling them. There's a kind of the switches in there, and it's got a brass stem on it, and the knobs just slip over the stem. And I didn't put them back on because I didn't want to unnecessarily cycle them and abuse them and possibly crack them. So I put them inside the case for now. And this is the outside. This is the back of the unit. Unfortunately, the sticker ripped. This is to certify. This is an instrument that has acoustical balance, which provides a tone of the Golden Throat Chief Engineer Home Instrument Department. This is back when engineers actually did work. The cord was stowed in there. Looked like my father had replaced some of the screws on here. There's a sticker on the bottom that's intact, showing the location of the tubes and how to replace them. Model number, serial number, RCA Victor. So we're going to crack this open. So as you may or may not know, if you've watched a lot of my YouTube videos, I tend to have a scattered interest in many things. I'm not good at anything, trust me. Here's a hex screw. I don't have a decent pair of pliers, but it shouldn't be that tight. Oh, there it goes. Broke the fucking thing already. So let me get this off. So the other thing is, I got a nice little Christmas gift for my kids. I got this new tripod and stand, and it even has a Bluetooth on-off switch, which comes in handy. But what I don't have in my toolkit right here is a pair of pliers. So let me come back in a second. It gives me an opportunity to use this pause. Pause. So essentially, I must not know how to use this Bluetooth thing, because I can turn it off, but it starts taking pictures, and so I'm just going to do it manually. I'm standing right behind the camera, so let's get this off. Everything seems intact. This thing has never been tampered with electronically, at least. I see my father probably replaced these screws. God knows what he was doing inside of here. Maybe he replaced some tubes at some point. But these screws don't go with the original unit because they don't even match. So those two screws hold in the electronic chassis. And then these just take off the board that protects the back of the unit. It allows access for changing out the tubes if needed. So anyway, I was rambling about my many hobbies. I've done a lot of things in my life, and I tend to have a disorder where I like to do things to the point where I understand how to do them, but then I'm limited because I'm not talented. So I figure out how to do things, and then I kind of hit a wall where it becomes hard work, and I guess maybe I'm lazy or something. I don't know. So I have been doing a lot of things, and one of the things I haven't really done is electronic repair of this nature. I repaired a blender in an earlier video, but that was more of a electromechanical fix, which I'm kind of more experienced with. As far as electronic circuits, I'm probably going to need the help of some YouTube people. I was really surprised how many people do this exact same thing. I kind of started looking into this radio, and I found a bunch of I don't know why that was so friggin' tight. I found a bunch of videos of people doing this exact same thing, and they really know what they're doing. They've been doing it for a million years. Well, I'm a hack, and I'll probably fuck this whole thing up. So this comes off, and as I learned, there's a loop antenna on the back of it. I don't know if you can see it, but let me just go ahead and pull this out so we can. So here's the cord. It looks to be original based on that plug. Let's see if there's no manufacturer on it that I can read. Maybe in there, but it's a little dirty. Yeah, I think it says RCA. Oh, it's GE. So I don't know if that's original. I don't know if RCA bought GE parts. So here's the knob, the tuning knob that was on the front. And you can see it goes right over the, it's not broken or anything. It goes right over the stem of the tuner. Set that aside. And this was the on-off volume knob on the side. And likewise, it was a press-on fit. I don't know, focus, you can see that. So here is the electronics. I'll set those aside momentarily and show you the case. Now, I don't know what this is. Looks like a, oh, you know what that is? That's some wax from a capacitor that's leaking. That's what that is. I've learned about that on YouTube. So there's a bunch of old capacitors in here, which I'll show you, and that's a lump of wax sitting on the bottom of the chassis. So here it is. So the first thing you'll notice is it's a little dirty, but intact. And even this screen here that protects the speaker looks good, and there's a bunch of shmem hanging off the top and the bottom. So we're going to set this aside, and if I can get the radio working, we can clean this up, and maybe even, this used to be a nice shiny maroon, cool looking little unit. Kind of, I don't know, what's the old word for that? Not avant-garde, but like, I don't know, maybe avant-garde is what I'm looking for. That was 1951, this radio. It's an X551. So here comes the electronics. Now, I gotta be careful because the back of this thing has the loop antenna, which I already broke off one of the leads, if you can see it over here. I was trying to be careful, but this is the loop antenna for the AM radio, and it runs from these two wires into the radio. So I think I might want to clip that as we speak, and I can very easily reconnect those. I'm going to clip those so I can move this thing around without completely turning it into a shit show. So let me clip that right at the wire, and we'll set that aside. So this is just an intro. I saw a guy rebuild an entire radio in like an hour on YouTube, and I'm not experienced enough, so I'm going to have to take this slow. I just want to kind of show you what I'm doing. So this speaker looks really good. It's not ripped or torn. I'm not even going to, I'll touch it a little bit, but that's in good shape. I know this bulb doesn't work, so that's going to have to be replaced. That's easy, if I can find one. What I'm worried about are these, primarily, what I'm worried about are these tubes. Now, I don't even know if you can buy these tubes anymore of this style, this type. I don't see any obvious, like, burn marks or any issues with that. I think these are some kind of inductive tuning coils. There may even be, I don't know, some of these YouTube videos I've seen have a little mica on the bottom of them where there's a little bit of capacitance and induction. I really don't know yet. I have to print the schematics, which I found online. They're readily available. I think this, I don't know if that looks, oh, that's another tube. I thought that was might be an electrolytic capacitor, but that's a special tube in a metal can of some kind. So I don't know what that is. I'm going to have to look at the parts list when I get the schematics out. Speaker looks fine. I'll have to clean this all up, reconnect the antenna. That's easy. Now here's the interesting thing. So, well, this ain't good. I mean, oh, maybe that it is. That looks, I can't tell if that's even connected. Holding the camera and looking inside here is going to be difficult. I'm going to have to do this in a couple parts, but here are the capacitors. They're paper, wax covered. I don't know how they made capacitors in those days, and I'm thinking this is a, that's a, oh, look, the tube fell out as I'm talking to you. Yep, that's a tube. That's a tube of some type. I'll have to look at the parts list to see exactly what, but that one fell out. So I saw a guy repair this exact same video, and hopefully he can tune in and see my video, but he went and replaced every single capacitor, and to me it looked like he just threw them in parallel, which I've read is not the right thing to do, and that makes sense, because if it's a leaky capacitor, it could end up being a short or something, and it could end up becoming part of the circuit, so you won't know what you have. So what I could do is replace every single one of these capacitors with a modern capacitor. I don't know what this used to go to. That's interesting. You see that? I don't know if you can see it, but the capacitor is soldered down, but then this stub goes to nowhere land. But we'll see. But anyway, I've seen guys just clip these out and put in brand new capacitors. I've seen guys actually take the capacitor, and here's something I'm interested in. I'd like to take these capacitors out and put them in the oven and melt the old wax off of them, and you can pull out the innards and then clean the tube and then put the modern capacitors inside the tube so that it looks like it's an original, you know, vintage unit. So I don't know, I might play with that because I like throwing things in the oven. And you know, I really can't see too much. There's a lot of resistors in there, the old style resistors. I'd have to pull out a chart to see what their values are and then measure them with my ohmmeter. That seems to be broken, so it looks like I have to buy a new multimeter as well to finish this task, so I can read the capacitances and read the resistances and decide whether or not I want to replace the capacitors or not. But when I turned the unit on at my mom's, it hummed very lightly. It wasn't like a bad hum, but it was a hum. And that capacitor right there, it's a dry electrolytic type, and I gotta tell you, it looks rather pristine. I don't know if that's bad or not. So anyway, the radio hummed. I knew it was on. So, you know, at a quick glance, you know, I don't see a bad resistor. I don't see any sides of burning. So I'm thinking that ball of wax on the bottom of the unit, and based on where it was, came right out of this one, and it almost looks like it's already coming out of the paper. It's like forced out, like it. So I mean, God knows that could be the only bad thing in here, and the rest could be pristine. So what I'm gonna do is end this part 1 video, this introduction as to why I'm involving myself with electronic repair and why would anybody want to rebuild a 65-year-old radio, AM radio no less. I mean, who listens to AM radio anymore? I don't know. It's just one more project to keep me from killing myself, and keeping me learning and involved with the YouTube community, and you know, I don't know. I guess I'm a little bit deranged, as you could tell from my other videos. So I welcome any questions or thoughts or advice. Anybody that repairs radios watching this, you know, probably at a quick glance can tell me 10 things that are wrong with it. And so I may be reaching out to ask questions, and hopefully somebody will learn something from this, and hey, who knows? Who knows? Maybe I'll even become a radio repairman in a future life. Alright, KAFKUBA fans, that's enough for now. Thank you for listening and watching. So I've put the backboard or back plane or back of the case inside of the plastic or Bakelite case. I put these screws and the knobs in a plastic baggie for now. I'm gonna get the radio working hopefully, and then if that is successful, I'll clean this all up. And I've heard Brasso might help restore the finish on the outside, or maybe even wax, automobile wax. We'll worry about that later. Fortunately, I was able to download schematics and parts lists for this unit, so I have all the parts, which I find very interesting. It at least gives me insight as to what the parts are, their values. This is a page of changes to the various models from the schematic, probably revisions. There's nothing significant for my unit. And lastly, a nice schematic. So I guess I'm going to learn about tube amps. Even when I went to college in 84 to 87, we didn't even have to learn about tubes because nothing had tubes anymore. So it should be an interesting little learning exercise for an old washed up engineer. I'll hopefully have a part 2 out here, and we'll see what we can do.